All right. It looks like it says live, so we'll have Brianna. Can you welcome everyone?
Yeah, hi everyone. Welcome to Tech School. Today we have Michael Wood with us. My name is Brianna Cordova. I am CEO of Citizens Hive. Now, currently, over 40% of seniors that go into nursing homes experience depression. Now, this is due to factors such as fear and isolation from their family and loved ones. Now, Citizens Hive is a platform that's going to connect caregivers with seniors who are in need and therefore allow caregivers to bring seniors home and give them the personalized, compassionate care that they need in order to thrive. So, with that, we will start with tech school.
Thanks, Brianna. Stephen.
Awesome. Thanks, Brianna. Like Brianna said, we got an amazing speaker today. We got Michael Wood coming in. So we're excited to listen and learn from him today. But before I hand off to him, I just wanted to mention a few things, just some housekeeping here. If you have a chance, if you're watching this on YouTube, whether you're watching this live or watching this recorded, feel free to give us a like. Feel free to leave a comment down below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. We want to learn from you as much as you might want to learn from us and the speakers that present in these tech school sessions. So feel free to leave a comment, ask a question, share your thoughts, whatever that may be. All the interaction we get with videos like this help push it out to more people. So it's an easy way for those of you watching to kind of give back to the community, because you might help this video be pushed out to an entrepreneur who really needs to hear some messages that are shared today. But with that being said, I'll hand it off to Michael.
Well, thank you, Steve. I really appreciate the invites. This platform is pretty amazing. I've even learned, just working with Curling and the rest of the team on multiple events. And so I really appreciate that you invited me and what you're doing for entrepreneurs and startup founders. So thank you. Thank you, Steven, and the team. The amazing team behind Fokcus is the wealth of knowledge and experience is pretty amazing. So when I was in Louisiana, in the middle of a swamp, I had somebody give me directions one time that if I ran into a Burger King, I went too far. I'm Michael Wood. I'm a visual storyteller, founder of Never Forgotten Media. And what I learned from that experience and those directions was that storytelling is not a function. It's a part of our life. It helps us to connect on a completely different level. I'll go ahead and share some screen. So for me, I've really taken it to the next level, and so that's actually my go-to now. So when me and my wife are starting to argue about where we want to go eat, I'm like, hey, let's go to Burger King. But what it does is it sort of helps us with that emotional piece. So if we're starting to get, elevated on our emotions, or if we need to really connect with each other on a different level, it reminds us that we're people, and that storytelling sort of helps us connect on a different level that other species don't have. One thing that my childhood brung up in the swamps is that, I miss the South, but I don't miss the humidity and the bloodsuckers that flew around. Those little things love to eat me up. So, but with that, growing up in the South was a challenge because I lived in poverty. My life as a child was sort of like on the run. My mom hired a hitman for my dad. He still has scars on his neck. But I joined the Marine Corps because I appreciated the challenge. It was like a prestige challenge for me. And in the Marine Corps, I did transportation. I didn't do anything with media, logistics, security, training, and that aspect. And then when I was in Iraq, I was torn because at the time I was really focused on the team, taking care of my Marines, and I had two boys at home. So I was always in that conflict stage. So I realized I needed to make a pivot. So I left active duty, started working with the reserves, helping Marines transition off active duty. And then after that, I started working with a nonprofit that taught wounded warriors the media arts as an employable skill set. That opened my eyes. I saw a whole nother path that really changes and gives opportunities though for those that still wanted to serve and said, thank you, but we don't need you to serve anymore. I watched them go from no purpose in life to be excited about telling a story, editing, making films. And so I made another pivot. From that, it changed my degree path. So even with my TBI and PTSD and all that stuff and memory issues, I finished my degree at Cal State San Marcos, based in communication. I started Never Forgotten Media. And so for the last 10 years, I've been working in production, helping clients tell their stories, live streaming, TV broadcasting, brand films. And so, and really imparting knowledge that as a founder, for us, as you know, in the struggle of everyday life of trying to grow something, that how do we do that in our visual world today? Because I don't have $1,000 to hire a production crew. So that's why I'm here today, to take and pass on some of those tips and skill sets that I know that can help you, because they helped me along the way. And when you get to that level of now you're hiring a brand agency or something like that, now you're better prepared for telling them what you need. So one of the things that we struggle with founders or startups is that we might have the best product or service in the world, but if the right people don't know about it, does it really exist? Now, you know, like I mentioned earlier, one of the things that you can do is you can hire a brand agency, you can hire advertising, you can hire PR, you can hire a production company to help you do these things and get your word out there. But the reality is, don't we need that money for other things? You know, product development, work on our development team, or even just, you know, pay for our ramen noodles, because that's the kind of funds that we have. So what can we do? Well, earlier when I was telling you about my life growing up in the South, the reason why I did that was that, you know, I could come forth and say, okay, I've got all these Emmy Awards or this award, or I've made these films, or I've worked on these sets that cost more than houses, that cost more than houses in Arizona, that kind of thing. But in reality, what I have is a unique story. I have an experience. And that's the same thing each one of you have, is a unique story and an origin story that no other brand, startup founder, product, or service has. So how do we leverage that? How can we use that to help us? And that's why we're here today. Because really, stories is what connects us as human beings. It really helps us connect on a deeper level than just, you know, facts, directions. If you take a left, you go right. You know, I would have probably found my way in the swamps, but really taking and giving that element of their personality, giving me a funny anecdote, it really, to this day, I remember that experience on a whole different level than somebody just giving me directions. So the topics that we're going to run through today very quickly is 3-act structure, emotions, convenience, resolution, and sort of how those things play into even other aspects that don't deal with storytelling in the sense of production or marketing, but also in networking, elevator pitches. Storytelling is also important in those. Then what are some of the best tools that you can use right now? So, I mean, one of the challenges for anybody is like, okay, I know I need a camera, I need this, I need that. And what are the best tools? What is the best lighting setup? What is the best microphone? So I'll touch on that. And then the last thing is strategy. Taking a look at, you know, how we go about reviewing the content we create, knowing the audience, testing it, and then rinsing and repeating. So let's move into the 3-act structure. So the typical narrative that we have in entertainment, in brand films, web commercials, in your Super Bowl commercials is a 3-act structure. And what that is that pretty in the simplest terms, there's a beginning, middle, and an end. There are many different ways to tell stories, but we're so accustomed to this in our society that if we get something a little bit different, then it feels different. So when you're looking at the 3-act structure, just think of it in that sense. You know, your origin story had a beginning, a middle, and either an end or where you're going to go. So keep that in mind when you're setting up or talking, pitching, networking, or creating your live stream video. Think of that structure. Start, middle, end. Next thing I'm going to touch on is emotions. So one of the things about storytelling that really helps drive that message across for your product or your service is emotions. And I would hate to say that, you know, we use it, we play on emotions, but in reality, if somebody doesn't care, they're not going to share your message or your brand. So those tapping into those messages is what storytelling does. And in reality, as a consumer, we don't buy iPods, we don't buy iPhone because we need a phone. We don't use logic for our purposes or our purchases. We use emotions. It's based on emotions, how we feel about that product, what it makes us feel, and then we use logic to justify those decisions. So think about it in that terms. Those emotions are so core element to our human existence that logic is just a function to justify how we feel about it. Next aspect is convenience. Many times, you know, we like being entertained. We like the easy way of doing things. You know, if it makes our life easier, that's why most of us are here. And you're here as founders because there's a problem and you want to solve it and you want to make it easier for your customer. The customer is the same realm. They do not want to join or buy something that makes it harder for them. So think of, you know, they're not going to go buy a Lego set to take and build a phone stand. It does, unless you're looking for the challenge. I'm not going to buy a $100 Lego set just to take and, you know, create a phone stand. So think about that even with your stories, is that you don't want to take and give them a complex narrative. You know, your origin story, your messaging needs to be concise, help them move along in that flow, and don't make it super complicated because, like I mentioned, customers, your audience, they're not looking for a way to get into more problems or get into a solution. They're trying to find a solution to get out of a problem. So, and then the other thing is the resolution. Resolution in storytelling, you know, that ending. So if you have a challenge point in your life, you know, so my childhood was, you know, quite interesting. People want to know what happened to me later on in life. Did I succeed? Did I end up, you know, in a similar lifestyle? So that resolution is very important in the narrative of your story. And it's also important when you're talking with investors. It's also important in your elevator pitches or even networking, because we're drawn from technical perspective, technical people. We're all excited about the details, the facts. My camera can do this. My software can do this has this many lines of code. But in reality, facts tell. What we need is a story to sell. Those stories really help people to understand the features on a whole different level, the experience of what they're getting into. So just think of that resolution piece. You know, you don't want to give facts. You want to give stories that help people connect and see how that can fit into their life. And I've mentioned it a few times, but one of the aspects, the bonus aspect of storytelling and how you can apply it is, you know, when you're networking, when you're doing your elevator pitches, when you apply these concepts to just everyday interaction, people are more drawn to you. They're more interested in the aspects of what you're doing. And find me somebody that's an amazing salesman, somebody that can close deals every day. And I'll show you how they use storytelling, relevant storytelling. They connect with the audience or the customer in a split second, find a story that they believe that will really connect with them, and they use that to connect with them on a deeper level to be able to close that deal, that handshake, or leave an impression that's memorable. So that overall aspect and the theory of storytelling and stuff is great, but we're all starting out and we need tools to be able to do that. In today's age, we have amazing tools. Technology's advanced so much that there's all kind of cameras, there's all kind of lighting, there's all kind of ways of creating content. So the questions that come up most of the time is, what are the best tools? What is the best microphone? What is the best camera? And that depends on where you're at with that content creation, what you're trying to do, and where you want to go. Because in reality, you don't need a $40,000 camera. You're not making a film, you're not putting it on the big screens. You don't need to spend that kind of money. So the best tool really starts with what you have. If you have a cell phone, that's probably the best tool. If you have a little camcorder, if you have a DSLR camera, the tools that you have are the best tools to get started with. Because if you go buy something and then it sits on the shelf and you use it one or two times, it's not really helping you learn. You start with your phone, you learn the limitations, figure out which way you need to go, and then you move to that next level. So then after your phone or your DSLR, the camera that you have, the next thing that you really need to focus on is sound. So the best film, the best picture, if it has crappy sound, nobody wants to watch it. It's painful to hear bad audio. So you could have a major budget film and there's something just off about it. Typically, it's that sound. They didn't have enough in the budgeting to really create a good sound design for that film. So focus on your sound. If that's just earbuds that you plug into your phone, then so be it. That's going to be better than having your phone way out here and you've got a bunch of noisy background. And think about your space that you're in. So if you're like in my space, with AC and all that kind of stuff, listen, record, and listen. Because our ears hear all these noises and it sort of filters that out. But recorded audio does not. So here to see if you hear that air conditioner in the background, hear that fridge, that car alarm, somebody's phone ringing. Those are elements that will distract people from your videos. So if you can limit those or mitigate those before you start recording, it's going to make your production or your video content so much more engageable. The next thing for our best tools is lighting. So lighting is after sound and the aspects. The more light that you can add, the better your camera is going to do. So we all got crappy webcams on our laptops and stuff like that, because before we went into lockdown, webcams were just a tool, a function tool. Now we're using them to live stream meetings, to Zoom calls, and so we still are working with the tools that we have, but add a light. Get a nice soft light. A soft light is just it could be a lamp with a shade on it. Put that in front of your face, behind your camera to light your face more. That allows your camera to pick up the details and balance for you instead of a overly bright environment that is trying to compensate for. The other aspect, if you don't have enough light, then your camera is boosting the digital luminance of it. And that's when you get all the noise and it starts to get blocky and stuff like that. So work on your lighting. There are different ways to light. There's 3-point lighting, but just start with the main one. You can get those ring lights and play with it. Dial it, change the color of the light to see how you look on that camera, because each camera is going to change and the software is, if it's a automatic webcam, that it will change depending on the light and the environment that you have. So moving on to some of the best tools that you already have, what kind of strategy can you use to start deploying it? And, the easy way would be to hire a brand agency and, drop, $1,500, for a couple of posts, and boom, you're out there in the world. But we need that $1,500 to pay for our ramen noodles. So the first thing I would say is just start. Justin Bieber didn't get where he is in his career today because he waited, because he had to have that perfect product. Just like when you're doing your MVPs, you want to get it out there and test. The same thing is with your visual content. Get in front of the camera, post it, have people comment on it, and it's going to be horrible. Who cares? But what's important is that you're actually taking that step to start, and not waiting till you have, a 98% polished item. Because if you wait till that time, as you know, it's too late. Second aspect of your strategy is you need to review. It's going to be painful to go back and watch your content. You're going to look, even if it's a year later, but it shows you how far you've come, and it shows you what works and what doesn't. So reviewing your content is really important, because if you don't have time to review your content, or you don't want to, why should anybody else? And with that aspect, you're starting to now get into the mindset of your audience. It's really important to really understand, who you're targeting. And, just like a product or a service, you want everybody to use it, but you really have to find your first followers. So if you look at Nike, they did not create a brand that's catered to everybody in the world. They created a brand lifestyle for the athletes, showing them how they could live a life that they enjoy with the products that benefit that. Because of their first followers, because the athletes believe so much in that branding, so much in that product base, that it's become that their audience and their purchasing power is now you've got kids that are, 6-year-olds wanting Nike because it's a recognizable brand, even though they're not a professional athlete. So make sure that you know your audience. So with your content, when you're getting on there and you're talking to the audience, try to get into their mindset. I'm watching on my phone, so I don't need to have small text on screen. I don't need to have distracting things in the background. I need to take and be able to talk and engage directly with them. And it needs to be quick and concise, because they're on the train or they're wanting entertainment. So get to know your audience and learn more about them. Because sometimes that you'll find is when you start creating content, you'll start building an audience, and, sort of like viral videos. I've got many clients that come in and it's like, oh, I want a viral video. Do you have $100,000? No. All right. What do you really want? Because, you make a viral video and then you get thousands of people that like your video, and it's, cats playing around, and they're kids. They're not your customer base. They're not your audience that you need. So that viral video is only doing brand awareness, but it's not getting you to what you want. Your return on investment is not that big for viral videos, because you're not getting your message out there. You're not getting them to that decision point. And just like a sales funnel, your content should direct your customers to a decision point. So, and then the next aspect of your strategy is you have to test it. Testing is, after you review it, after you work on getting to know your audience, or realizing you have the wrong audience and you need to shift your content, you got to test your content. One thing is asking family and friends, hey, what do you think about this? But definitely you want people that will give feedback of, I hate this, or I like this, or this is really important to me. And you can test it in so many different ways. If you're doing it on social media, there's all kind of matrix. Don't look at the oh, I got 4,000 views. Maybe in the beginning you use that as a matrix, but you want to move beyond that and look at the engagement piece. You can have 4,000 views, but if you have 3 people that engage, that might be more important, because those 3 people are really your customer base, not those 4,000 views. So create something that you can test your content with, because it will change. If you don't know, if you're just throwing content on the wall and it's all over the place, and you don't have any metrics to test it, you don't know how it's going to perform for you. But it allows you to also change those testing measures to figure out what results that you're looking for. And you can't test without starting somewhere. And then the other aspect of the strategy is you need to rinse and repeat. Go back to the beginning. Review your content. Look at the audience, how they're participating with their information, and test it and keep going through that process. If you look at some of the biggest visual brands on social media, in promo videos, in advertising, they do this on a daily basis. They go through their content every single day, and they go back to the drawing board and they start over. And it's not something, we're all strapped for time. We're all trying to manage it, like, okay, well, we've got to worry about sales. We're sales, development, building the team. And so all this sounds complex. Just do a quick checklist. Do a quick video, post it, create some way to test it, rinse and repeat, and just make it a part of your strategy to make it a consistent, daily, weekly, bi-weekly item that you're creating content that puts it out in the world. So then that way, when you launch in a couple weeks or in a couple months, or worst case scenario in a year, you already have some content that your customers or those looking to learn more about you or your brand or service, you already have content out there, instead of them just going to a shiny website that's got a bunch of nice pages, but really doesn't connect them with you, because they don't hear the story. They don't hear where you came from and why you created this product or service. So getting back to the core elements of storytelling, just remember that, your story, your origin story is your competitive edge. Everybody can tell the same story of, guy tries to get the girl and can't. You look at the films, almost every film nowadays has that kind of element to it. It's just the way you tell it. And it's your experience, your origin story that really defines what that story is. So use that, because nobody else has that. Nobody else in the world has your story. Just remember the 3-act structure, the beginning, middle, and end. Make it easy for them, to give them that resolve piece. Give them, you don't have to give a backstory if you don't need to, but this is where the starting point is. Here's my pivot, that middle piece, what I did to get to the top of the hill. And then because I got to the top of the hill, I have high fives and people, are giving me awards because I made it to the top of the hill. Don't forget the emotions. Emotions are probably the most important piece of any logical decision, if you want to call it that. And just remember that logic we use to actually justify our emotions. We don't use emotions to justify our logic. It doesn't make sense. Convenience. Make sure that your stories, your product, your services are helping your customers, your viewers get out of a problem, not into one. And make sure that if you present a challenge, give some kind of resolution or the way forward on where you're going. The best tools, the one you have in your pocket, the one you have in your room. I'd rather see you go get an old, camcorder, start creating SD videos, uploading them to YouTube, than buying a $5,000 camera. It takes more time to try to figure out and get the best setting, because it just delays that process for you to get started. Work on your sound, work on the noises in space. You can buy a $2,000 microphone just so you could do podcasts. But if your focus is not podcasts and you're not looking at doing it at, to for fundraising or ads in your podcast, you don't need that. You could get a $60 microphone, control the sound space you have, and start doing. And then as soon as things, ramp up, if you have a podcast, if you get a lot of followers, then you can worry about that issue down the road of, okay, we need to up our audio level. Make sure that you get enough lighting on your face. We all have different backgrounds. We want to show off cool things in our space, but make sure that light that you have in front of you is nice and soft. Soft is meaning it's sort of diffused, so you don't want to have a flashlight pointing on you, because then it makes you look like a spooky movie. So those ring lights are pretty good. They have diffusers on it, and just dial it down, but light your face. And then for the strategy review, review your content. Go back and watch it. It's going to be painful. Go back to the beginning, see what was working, because many times one of the things with reviewing is that we get caught up with the content that we're creating, and sometimes we lose our way. We're getting more on a comedy track than a more technical track, just because we think that what's going on, and then we look back at the first one and trying to figure out why the first one did so much better than content number 25. It's because we shifted and we thought this was more important, but you go back and look at it and it's like, oh, it was horrible, but our audience appreciated that more than the production level that we were bringing with our newer content. So go back and review. Know or learn your audience. Just try to get in the mindset of your audience or your consumer, your buyer. Don't think about what they need. Think about what problems that they have. So many times we don't take and watch videos or movies because we're trying to complicate things. We're looking for entertainment. We're looking for a way out of our daily lives, to change our reality, that we get to enjoy something that we're not dealing with our normal daily stresses. So just think of your audience and the content that you're creating. Make sure you test it. Create some kind of testing measure. And like I mentioned, it is probably going to be the wrong testing measure, but you won't know that until you create it, start testing, and then adjust. And then rinse and repeat. Keep doing it over and over. Those that are out there, big brands, LinkedIn, Facebook, all these influencers, they don't just do it and post it and leave it. They go back and they go through the process over and over again to see if it's working and figure out where they need to adjust, and looking at the future where they want to go. Because if you look at some of these social media influencers, they start building their audience and then they look at the other platforms. If this platform shuts down, where do I go? How do I scale from here? I'm Michael. I want to thank you for your time. I appreciate your presence and your awareness. And with this, I'll hand it over to Steve so we can get into some nitty-gritty questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. That was great. We learned a lot from that presentation. Thank you. So we do have a question in the chat. Wanted to share with you. It says, can you give a couple examples of good storytelling? Say one, promoting some sort of a physical product, let's say like juice, or promoting a service. Do you have any examples on any of those?
All right. So definitely with the product, going back to Nike, they spend billions of dollars on their marketing and their content, but in the basic sense, getting really down to their audience, who their target audience is. So they created content around that, talking to the athletes, and not just like, oh, here's a new product to take and help you, for better running or this or that. It was really about how your life is going to be so much better with our product as an athlete. With the juice, think about it, and like I mentioned it earlier, we can really get into the details of juice, the technical aspects, the facts of why this 40-year-old recipe is really going to change the market. But how does that, think about the audience and the aspect of what is that juice going to do for them? How does it help them? How does it change their lifestyle, or how does it make them feel? And then sort of go back from that and then build your narrative and your story from that. So then that way, when they get interested in your juice, they can go look at the facts and the details of why your juice is so amazing. But if you bring those facts up in the beginning and highlight those of them over the experience or what it will do to help them be a better person, the message gets lost, because you look at products and juices, there's millions of juices, in Walmart or in the grocery store, and they all have labels of all the different facts. But we go towards a brand of this iced tea. I want to be associated with it because I believe this will help me feel better, because there was content that was created around them, a story that I connected with, that I was like, this is going to help me, or I want to be a part of that process. Did that answer the question?
I think so. Thank you. Thanks, Michael. So I know in the talk that you just gave, you gave some great tips and a great kind of framework for startups, entrepreneurs, anyone really who wants to try to tell a story or improve the way that they do their storytelling. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you've seen, whether they be startups, entrepreneurs, people make, in your experience?
Waiting, or sitting there trying to get a perfect, and I'm guilty of it. I'm, because of my profession, I've got to make sure that things look or sound a certain way, and I do 400 takes. And at the end of that day, that doesn't serve you or serve me that well. If I just get to that 87, that MVP, that 80%, put it out there, and then get through the rest of the stages of, evaluating, testing, seeing if it's working. Because I'm guilty of, taking weeks for retakes, because I want it to be at that level of what I expect of quality. And it cost me more in my time. It cost me more in losing out on the audience being able to engage with that content. So that's probably the number one aspect. And then the number two is definitely getting caught up in the aspect of having better gear, new flashy objects, the new iPhone type thing. It's emotional driven, because it's, oh, this is going to change your life, and they put millions of dollars into this branding and advertising that we connect with. But at the end of the day, the best tool is what you have, not the one that you're trying to research and buy, or that you need to spend $1,000 on. So work with the tools that you have. When you have a roadblock that you can't get over or get around, because some of the best storytelling comes with roadblocks. Because if you throw a bunch of money at a big film, they go through all of it, and everybody's like, oh, that was a nice film. But Friday, a lot of the major films that made a lot of money with the smallest amount of budget is because they had limitations. They didn't have any money. They didn't have the best cameras. So they had to figure out how to tell their story differently. So use that as an advantage. Look at it as not as a limitation, but as this is going to help me tell the story in a different way, and it's going to be better because of that.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. So we did get another question in the chat while you answered that last one. Tripti, did you want to ask that?
Sure. Hi, and thank you so much. This was great. What duration do you think is ideal? And I know it depends on what the overall, if it's for a pitch or et cetera, but just in this case for like an elevator pitch or just for a customer to understand what, who you are, why you're doing what you're doing and what you do. What do you think the ideal duration is for something like that?
Seconds. In reality,
Yeah.
our attention span is so short today, and it's a paradox because here we are. We want to cater to it because we want to connect with the audience, but then we're also helping everybody just stay in that space of, okay, instantaneous gratification. With that, if it's something new, if it's an audience that's not your followers yet, get to the point. Open up with some kind of hook, open up with something that's quite interesting, some kind of tagline, but then get to, okay, what are you presenting? What is your purpose? And then get to that story, but make it very concise. So if it's something for social media, I would try to stay under a minute, for initial content. Now, once you start getting into longer formats and you're talking more to your followers and your fans that are going to watch longer than that, then you create content for them. But for general audiences, you want to keep it nice, short, so then they can share it. But you also got to think about, and it comes down to that testing. So when you create different links, you'll find out that LinkedIn algorithms will promote something that's a little bit longer. YouTube will promote something that's over 3 minutes. So looking at the platform, looking at your audience, and testing is probably the best way to go about that. But yes, definitely structuring your story and your content under a minute on social media, and then testing it to see how people evaluate or engage with it, and then create a 3-minute piece. And just remember that your 3-minute piece will probably not get 4,000 views. It's those 3 engagements that you really want. And that's what you're trying to get towards.
So helpful. Thanks. Can I just ask a quick follow-up? What would you allocate in that 30 seconds or minute? How would you allocate your time then, between the pieces?
So you definitely want to get that hook in the beginning. Our attention spans, we're scrolling, if you're on social media and thinking about it in that terms, we're scrolling, and if we have autoplay on there, it needs to be something visually, not audio, visually engaging. Somebody jumping out of the screen or somebody just, doing something stupid, not saying that you need to go do something stupid, but I'm saying smiling or something that's engaging. So then that way, I want to know what this person has to say. So that's within the first few seconds of your video to pull them in. Once you get them there, your audio has to be nice and clean, and reasonable for the platform. You need to get your brand. What is your message? I'm here to talk to you today about this. So that way they know what to expect. The worst thing for all of us is when we click on a video and we expect it to be one thing. 10 minutes later, we just wasted our time because that was a talk on something I had no interest in. So get to the topic very quickly. So then that way, if it's not of an interest, they get off. Yeah, it sucks that you lose them in the very beginning, but that's not who you were trying to talk to anyways. So
thank you so much.
Thanks, Michael. So we have one other question, and then we're going to do a little speed networking session to end things off. So this is a question that we've asked a number of our speakers before, Michael, and we love to hear your take on it. So imagine you had a chance to talk to your younger self before or at the early stages of your startup journey. We know you're a founder and never forgot media and everything like that, and you've dealt with entrepreneurs in the past. Are there 1 or 2 tips that you would give your past self, given everything that you know now?
Yeah, like I mentioned earlier, complexity of trying to get the best piece or the best content out there. I struggle with it, just because it's like, oh, it's got to be good, or everybody's going to hate it. Well, they might hate it, but you won't know that until you get it out there. Justin Bieber, as a kid, and his mom's posting his videos on there, he's a kid, so he wasn't really, caught up in that. If he was, then he probably wouldn't be where he is today, because he wouldn't have that exposure of just getting that content out there when he was so young. So that would be the first thing I would tell myself. The other thing is that I'm my worst self enemy. So, all the naysayers, all the people, the comments and stuff, around me, I'm like, oh, whatever. What affects me the most is what I believe or think, and it's not a perception that everybody else holds. So that aspect of that negative thought of like, oh, I'm not a good speaker. I'm not a good presenter. I'm a horrible networker. I'm a horrible writer. All these aspects I've said before, because I'm more of an introvert than anything else. But I went through that process over time of saying, you know what, I need to put myself on stage, talk to an audience of 400, and it was the worst experience. But I wish I would have done that earlier in my life. I wish I would have gotten on a stage and just went through that. And, every time I get on stage to this day, I still get nervous. I still get tongue-tied and all that aspect. But if I'm worried about the fear of failure, more important than the success of achieving something, then I never get there. So I just wish I would just done things like that much earlier in my life. Then, who knows where I'd be. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. Those are some great tips and some great stories behind it.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank you. This is awesome.
And I know, Steve, I know you're going to be setting up the speed networking. Are the rooms set up, or you need a little bit more time?
Yeah, they're all set up, so we can close this out and I can end the YouTube and we can start it. Do you want to give everyone just a gist of what the speed networking is?
Yeah, as you guys know, Fokcus is part of the board of Startup Month. And at the end of each Startup Month session, they always had at least a speed network where we kind of pair up two people so they can talk for 5 minutes and just interact, maybe talk about the session, or maybe even just network on what they're doing. So we kind of thought that process worked out really great for Startup Month. So we've been doing it for Tech School. So I think it's been really fun. I think there's even some people here from Startup Month, so that's great. But I just want to just do a little shout out to some of the people here in the cohort. I mean, Larry here, that's great too. And I think for Michael, could you talk just a little bit, just like 30 seconds about Never Forgotten Media? Could you just talk a little bit about that group?
Never Forgotten Media was created to help get vets on set and help clients tell their stories with the resources that they have. So
that's good. Yeah, and we definitely like your mission, and thanks for coming on.
Yeah, no, thank you. And quick shout out to Time Ends. Thank you for joining today. Time actually works with Options for All. So they're a film and media school down in San Diego that helps those with physical disabilities, young adults, learn the arts as an employable skill set. So thank you. And he's also
thanks, man. I appreciate it.
Doing some work with the homeless and getting that message, helping the homeless tell their story instead of our perception of what they're living. So.
Oh, that's awesome. Great. That's great. Thanks for coming on.
I thought I was unmuted. Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Awesome. So we're just about good to go. So I'll just do a wrap up message and we'll start the networking. So just to echo, from the beginning of the talk, if you are watching this on YouTube, whether it's live or recorded, feel free to give us a like. We'd love to hear your comments. We want to learn from you as much as you might want to learn from us and our team and the speakers that, speak at these events. So feel free to leave a comment, whether that's sharing your thoughts or just asking a question. All the interaction we get with videos like these help push it out to more people. So that interaction that you leave us, whether it be that like or comment, could push this out to an entrepreneur who really needed to hear some of the tips and the messages that Michael shared today. So if you have a chance to do that, feel free to do so. But as always, thanks for tuning in for another session, and we'll see you in the next one.